Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insight Show. The show streams live at 5 every Wednesday evening on YouTube and Twitch and streamed directly into your ear the following Monday. Hosted by Edward Walton, Andrea Fisher, Rod Trent, and Brody Castle, the Microsoft Security Insight Show provides information, news, and tips on Microsoft security solutions.
Now.
Recorded February 8th, 2023. Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Show. Good evening, Andrea. Good evening, Brody. How are you doing?
Good evening, Edward. You sound so very just dashing this evening with that deep voice. But
I know. This is part of my retransformation since my new year just started February 1st, right? Speaking from the diaphragm. There you go. So.
Well, I will do so as well. I am sitting here in Dallas, Texas, going to the Dallas Microsoft office tomorrow. So excited to be out and about. Brody, how are you?
Fun. I'm doing well. I mean, my voice has always been awesome, but Edward really just cranked it up a notch there for sure, man. Hey, you're a close second now, Edward. You're a close second and best voice on the show.
So close second. Good. I've known some people who've made a career off being second.
Yeah.
That's all right pressure. With me.
That's all right. Yeah.
There's certain things being second that don't bode well for you. Like, you could probably do all right as the second born, but as, the second husband, probably not.
Some life advice there. Yeah.
So, hey, nothing technical for me this week. I'll start off by saying, Ed, what did you do this week? I've been doing pricing. But I've taken a new approach. I don't dread it anymore, like I dread talking licensing. So I'm really looking at it from a perspective where it affords me the opportunity to learn about the personality, disposition, and ultimate goals of a customer. Because if they're willing to go through the consultative exercise with me, and I actually got two of them there are, hey, we don't know what we don't know. So I said, well, if you don't, I will run the POC. You send me this, and I'm going to tell you how we structure it. Well, we have this. Your timeline's on. I've already done an evaluation of your skill sets, your exposure to Sentinel, how comfortable you are with Azure. You don't get to drive the POC. I do. And this is how we're going to structure it. And instead of you trying to rush it through it, I make learning a mandatory requirement of all of my customers who want a POC or POV, proof of value. I override the salesperson and everybody unless they can qualify and show me that they are skilled enough to understand. And I don't care about your 10, 15 years in Elk and Splunk and Sumo Logic and ArcSight. How good are you in Azure around these particular things? And how good are you in Sentinel if you do have an exposure to it? Now, I've had some customers who were like, oh, I'm going to test out. I don't need to take the exam. Why? We've been using Azure Monitor for 4 years. KQL stuff. He said, I just need to know the syntax for KQL for Sentinel. And they like, we have 10 log analytics workspaces that we're using, right? So I'm like, see, bingo. Now I can accelerate it. So I started to customize my POC documents. I'm doing one for a customer. And the customer said, well, let's just go with 8.5 terabytes a day. And she said, the CISO said, and that's probably low because we don't know what we got. But we do know we got to get this stuff in, and then we'll pare it down. We know the bill is going to be this big at first. We budgeted for it. We're going to get it down to a thing. So 8 months later, we absolutely have a financial operational platform to say, this is the level set. And I love those type of customers. Then I got some customers who don't want to tell me anything. Well, what solution are you using? It's an enterprise modern day sale. Okay. How much data are you coming in? Well, we roughly believe. I said, well, can you give me your data sources in a spreadsheet or something and export it from your current SIM? And then they go, oh yeah. And then they realize if you export it to me, 8 times out of 10, I can figure out what you're using. Unless you sanitize it, right?
Yeah.
And so some of them, and then I'm like, well, how much are you paying? Well, why do you need to know that? You said cost is a huge factor. And this is the reason you're considering how much are you paying now? And then I can understand maybe where your pain points is. So your pain points are, so we don't hit those same pain points in the way that we architect. I don't architect around pricing. Hence my tagline. If you have to ask how much it costs, then no one tell you. So that's going to be my little thing that I'm doing. One of my teammates on the team, that's his thing. Everybody else on my team seems to shy away for it, except for me and Jeff and Drew. Everybody else shies away from it. But I see that there's a need for it. Egan and I were on a call today about a new service that's going to come out that will make this whole evolution less painful, more official at Microsoft. I can't talk about it here, but it's coming. I can share to you guys internally what's coming down the line. If they execute it right, it's going to make me and Andrew's life much better.
Nice.
That's all I got. Andrew, what you do? Why are you in the fancy? What is that? The W or?
It's no, honestly, it's if anyone stayed at the Nilo in Dallas, I was telling Brody, it's like a prison. Everything's made of concrete, has exposed light bulbs. It's not my favorite, but it's the closest one to the Dallas Las Colinas office. So,
is that a background or the real room?
That's the real room.
I mean, it seems like you decorated. I mean, it's highlighting your hair. Look at that. It's all blended in right there. That's pretty cool.
She planned that.
Look at that. It looks fancy, though. My glasses.
But to me, my biggest upset of the day, as I told you guys earlier, is that they are closing the Tampa Microsoft office because it doesn't get enough traffic. And I go to the office every day. So I'm really bummed about that.
You want to run down the list?
I don't even know. So I know it was Nashville, Tampa, Alpharetta, Oakland Park.
Yeah,
Oakland Park, Kansas, I think, and there was one more, but I don't remember.
I'll find it. I thought I put it in the chat today when all of us was chatting, but when I saw the news that the Avalon office here north of Atlanta is where I live. What near that used to be the signature office, but there's nobody there.
Yeah.
Right. They just go.
I mean, I understand why they're doing it, though. It's funny because lately, the Microsoft office has been busier this last month. So, I mean, the Tampa office. So, but I get it. I just don't like working from home every day. I get.
All enough, the reason I thought I was going to be late today, I was in the office, and yeah, it's. I sort of knew something was up. They started decommissioning the seats. All the stuff. What I'm trying to score is one of those Surface. What's the big one?
Yeah, the Surface Hubs. Yeah.
I'm trying to score one.
What do you mean you're going to score one? You're going to throw it in the back of your car? Like when they're closing down? Just like, just.
Oh, maybe they're going to give them away. Who knows what they're going to do with
them? Yeah, I've been giving them away before.
Like $2,000 new.
But I appreciate the solidarity, Noodle, but I don't think a DDoS attack of the Tampa office would be the right kind of traffic.
It will probably exacerbate and accelerate the decommission of the office.
Yeah.
Noodle, let Noodle sees a nail, everything's a hammer, man. Or is that the other way around? Yeah, there you go.
So super quick. Things are real busy on my front. That divestiture spinoff I was telling you both about last week is challenging and fun to learn. Yeah, it's neat, but we're doing a lot of good work there. And other than that, there was a bunch of Purview announcements, everyone's favorite product, right? There's a show yesterday, adaptive protection, pretty cool. There's some other enhancements around like migrations and other stuff, and we'll post the blog article in the show notes. I could spend some time talking about it, but they did a good job announcing all that. And then if there's nothing else, I think we should probably get to our guest who's been in the green room. I think we're out of beer now in the green room, so Edward, we're gonna have to get you to refill that. But maybe we'll bring in our guest, Josh. What do you two think about that?
I think that's great. And let's just say our fourth co-host, Rod, is at Blue Hat in Seattle this week, so he will not be joining us. But in his stead, we have Mr. Josh Bregman.
Hey, Bregman! Hey, folks! And the audience goes, wow.
The green room looks remarkably like my home office.
Hey, that's how we do. That's how we do.
We've got cameras in all of our guests' offices, so we can make it as home-like as possible to increase your comfort level.
So I'll just apologize in advance if dogs, kids, I've tried to be like, no, I'm doing a live thing, but
we know how it is.
It happens.
So thanks for having me. Watch this show. We have spiders, people chopping down doors with axes, all type of shenanigans goes on in this show.
That happens weekly. It's crazy. Yeah. Josh, tell us about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? We'd love to hear about it.
Sure. So my name is Josh Bregman. I'm a principal product manager at Microsoft on the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint team. I have 25 years of cybersecurity product experience. Big companies, small companies. Prior to this, I was a chief operating officer at a 40-person startup network detection response, but I think I've basically had every job in software. I started as a software engineer. I did a consultant. I did pre-sales. I did sales. I did sales teams. I've just done everything at this point, which is probably what makes me qualified to be a product manager at Microsoft. So
how long you been at the big house?
What's
how long
that?
You been here at the big house?
I'm still new. I've been here not quite 2 years. So I am still definitely learning and humbled to be part of the mission.
So if you're in the South, you're a sophomore.
I'm a sophomore. I have been trying. Somebody would hire me. They said, listen, say that you're new for as long as possible and ask a lot of, and I really have been trying that, but I'm entering my sophomore year, like you said, and I think people expect me to know things at this point. So, but everybody's been super awesome, teaching me and bringing me up to speed. And so, yeah.
Cool.
But, with cyber in particular, it's sort of weird. It's a weird thing. I was very kind of fortunate. I always had sort of computers in my house, when I was 5 and 6 years old. I don't know if my parents will watch this, but, thanks, Mom and Dad.
Right.
My mom was running a book business out of our house in 1980, and we had an Apple II, and it had an actual computer, I don't know if anybody remembers any of that stuff. And my dad's a software engineer. And so they'd be like, we don't know what to do with you. Read these basic programming books. And so it just sort of
figure it out, Josh. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me tell you, there was nothing cooler in second grade than giving people a pop quiz on Apple II high-res graphics and being like, so kids, when X goes up, it goes to the right. And they're like, yeah. I was wrong. It goes left. So a lot of time with the computer when I was a kid, but
that's
so
cool.
just for that, always with the computers and stuff. And then cyber was just sort of by chance, early on, by the early, pre, God, what was it? 1997, 2 jobs, in front of you. And one of them just happened to be this web single sign-on company called Netegrity, which did really well. But I almost didn't go there because back then somebody would offer you $6 more and you're like, I'm going to go do the other thing. And, my dad was you're young and you don't know stuff, but when you take a job and you're going to say you're going to show up, you should go do that. So
it's interesting you said that. I sort of started my civilian career in information technology, not cyber. I didn't get into cyber until the last 10, 12 years, maybe.
Yeah.
I've been doing this since 97, whatever else. Was there a distinct job that said that this? Because I don't remember cyber being a thing.
No.
I mean, guy, you the virus guy, the antivirus.
So I was very fortunate. I was software engineer. I was building cybersecurity. The web single sign-on was a product. But what I think the sort of evolution there, though, I remember, again, I can't remember what year it was. You would go to the CISO, I don't know, it was the CISO group or whatever, and you'd go talk to them, have an opportunity to talk. And it was basically oh, this is the person who runs the database. They're also in charge of cyber, right? And probably sadly enough, bad things had to happen where people are this is actually a real discipline and a thing. So it was just sort of once I got the domain expertise of building a product and then sort of talking to people about product, you just sort of wind up in that field. So
you mentioned Netegrity, and oddly enough, I remember that name, never worked for me and everything, but I remember that. Oh God, who was your competitor back then? Company out of Houston. But anyway, what's your superpower now? I mean, What do you do? I mean, I know Brody's superpower. I know, Andrew's superpower.
It's a really good question. I mean, I think the problem that I'm working on now, the thing that they have sort of given me the opportunity to work on now is ransomware. I mean, that's a lot of the last job that I had was a hardcore network detection and response company, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So a lot of the same kind of concepts, obviously on a much smaller scale. And so I've just been kind of broad set of like exposure in cyber. My superpower is ADHD. It could be my superpower too, for all I know.
It's definitely my superpower.
I'm like
100% of my test.
That's what it's anyway. So I think I'm just sort of interested in these hard problems, right? I'm always sort of, if I'm looking at my sort of career, it's always been these sort of like really hard problems, right? So early on, that was like web single sign-on, like that was a hard problem to solve. Then I worked on like fine grain entitlements and authorization. That was another really hard and like leading edge problem to solve. I did API security. I did DevOps security. So I'm always like in the kind of new and interesting and challenging things. And so that these days, that's this sort of like ransomware piece. And it's like to do it for Defender antivirus, which is just, I still am humbled by the fact that they let me do it. I mean, honestly, you sort of look at you just look at the real opportunity to protect customers at like a massive scale. It's just humbling and awesome. And so I'm very compelled by the mission. It's like a super, super hard problem, but like I'm fired up to go work on it every day.
So go ahead, Andrew. I'm sorry.
That's all right. So Josh, I was just going to say, most people, when they think about ransomware, I don't think they usually think about Microsoft Defender for Endpoint or even antivirus as the solution to ransomware. Can you explain to us why that would be?
I don't know. I mean, maybe I got to come on the show more often. All that I can really say is that when we look at, the data, right? And so it's a couple instances that Microsoft's been working on things. There was cyber signals in 2022 and the digital report. What it actually turns out with ransomware is like basic configuration, basic things on and configured properly is actually makes a huge difference. Like the digital defense report is like 98%. It's like we know how to stop with good hygiene. So even though there's lots of things that are going on and in no way are those things like unimportant, it's sort of like if you want to get started, like having Defender antivirus on is like probably the best thing that you can. I'm a little biased, but it's certainly one of the top things that you should be doing, patching, MFA, lock down your network. I mean, these are things that I think are all about like cyber hygiene. I think they're things that everybody knows about, yet for whatever reason, don't ever quite get done. But when you look at like the data, it's just like basic things are what keep people safe. So I just have to do more podcasts, more live streams to just help people.
Get the word out.
I'm just curious, like, what do you think people are saying is the sort of answer that a ransomware, if it's not just basic, like antivirus, 2-factor, lock down your network, patch your servers, like, is there something else there?
Well, honestly, I think the way most people, or at least I'll just say my customers, I won't say most people, think that somehow, because it almost, 90-something% of the time it's coming in via email. So somehow email should be the solution, right? So somehow, making sure that those kinds of messages don't get through and those kinds of things. So that's why I want you to highlight what the benefits are.
So more is better. Phishing is definitely a main, like, sort of attack vector in the way that people get in. So yes, please email, and yes, please for Defender for giving you that holistic view across the whole suite. And it's not just endpoints or identities or mail. I mean, it's all of it. That having been said, where they go from email is onto a device. I mean, like, think they're going onto your machine. And so if it's something that we, I wouldn't say know about, like, I mean, the antivirus is a sort of like maybe a misconception, is sort of like primitive and only sort of signatures and like whatever. It's a very sophisticated piece of software, cloud, AI, machine learning, like whatever. But like we are very good when did I get a buzzword there? Did I say AI?
No, you're good. No. You're good. We're just watching chat at the same time. We're having chat.
So Josh, we're not being rude between Twitch.
I just want to be fair. I'm semi-paranoid. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing some insight.
Yeah, this is all set up to make fun of you for the next.
Yeah, that's all.
No, it's all. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
You did talk to my parents.
Yeah. So to piggyback the question that Andrew asked, the answer that you gave. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Is the Microsoft Defender the antivirus that's sort of incumbent in the OS? How's it stack up? You know, I'm old enough to remember that if it wasn't Norton/Symantec, it's this sort of like it's not your father's sort of antivirus, right? And so like this is it's the sort of like the I don't want to say lazy. It's the sort of like old sort of notion, like it's the thing that just comes built in. It's not really very good. You don't really, you definitely need something else. I didn't bring the independent tests and like all that stuff, but like that's probably the best thing I can say is like, it stacks up. It's top right and everything. It's it's awesome. The only thing I can tell you as someone who's still I think relatively new is just like the scale of this thing, the amazing sort of people who are working on every day, the sort of cloud, the data, the effort that goes into it. I mean, the thing is definitely like second to none. So, but like, again, I'm biased. Like, please do check out the, independent tests and reports and things like that. That's probably all that I can say. And I think it's well beyond. I mean, yes, it's a mature product. People have been working on this thing for a long time, but tons of innovation in this thing. Like the frequency at which people are we're sort of making updates and signatures and watching the landscape is just like totally. It's amazing to me. So we have one of our he's our listener, but he almost runs the podcast with us, Noodle, right?
Yeah.
He asked a question. Can we ask the guest about DFE, Defender for Endpoint, or MDE? I assume you mean the Defender for Endpoint.
He wants to know.
I think he's saying what's the acronym? Is it DFE or MDE?
And gosh, that is I'm still new to Microsoft, but there's like literally an unlimited number of acronyms, right? So like Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is like that is the name. Microsoft
indeed. DFE is totally a new 3-letter.
DFE is not the right one. I'm just going to say that right now to Trevor and everybody else who's trying to promote DFE. You're wrong. It's MDE.
That's if I I'm sure the product marketing people look at this and they'll give me notes, but I don't think DFE is the thing.
There we go.
The official marketing name is MDE. If you want to call it DFE, Trevor, feel free, but everyone will fight you for it. Trevor drops the mic and walks out of the room. He's like, "I'm out of here." And I will say it's also confusing because when I talk to customers, MDE is a marketing umbrella, so I still say Windows Antivirus because Windows Antivirus is not the same thing as Microsoft Defender for Endpoint.
Yes, I mean there's a little inside baseball, right? There's the antivirus component, which is sort of what ships with the operating system, and then there's the MDE component, which gives you the EDR sort of capabilities. And so, I mean, I actually what's wild for me is I work very close with that team. It's sort of a joint effort and like whatever, but I get to work on the core antivirus, which is literally everywhere, and so that's like an amazing sort of opportunity.
No doubt. Whenever Microsoft decided, hey, let's actually make a focal point for security, it was the smartest business decision they could have made. I mean, they own the OS, right? It's a no-brainer. And to your point earlier, I remember I would deploy computers for people because I was that nerdy kid. And the first thing I did when Windows was installed was go download another antivirus because you couldn't trust anything that was just built into the OS. It was just like, this thing is insecure. The moment it's installed, I need something else to make sure my parents aren't calling me every day for internet support. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just come a huge, long way. Like you said, it's embedded in the OS now. MDE is basically just like a toggle. It's not even an agent. The fact that we can have these conversations with customers where we're agentless and it's OS enabled, best embedded. I mean, it's a no-brainer that Microsoft should be excelling in this space, and it sounds like we are. So.
So Josh, I will say that certainly there's still a misheld thought, and I think our competitors talk about this as well, that Windows antivirus is definition based and that kind of stuff. Can you sort of share some information on how that's?
Yeah, I mean, like, not to get all into the sort of the sausage making, but again, like, this is not a sort of simple like rules, if this then block kind of system. I mean, I think that's the sort of gone out the window on 10, 15 years ago, right? So there's a number of sort of pieces of data sort of gathered locally, and there's sort of signatures that are there, and those are sort of like obvious things. And then if there's things there that are sort of like need more like cloud adjudication, that goes up and down very fast. And then there's a rich repository of cloud sort of AI that can like render verdicts and bring this stuff down. It all happens very quickly and at scale. And so it is a very sophisticated piece of software, both on the client side and up in the cloud. It's sort of called the next generation antivirus, which I'm almost feel now is almost next. It's hard to know what the generations are, but like this is not a just like here's some list of hashes. If this, then stop it. So
let's get away from the nuts and bolts and the screws and the secret sauce.
Yeah.
If you've been around long enough, and it sounds like you have, one of the things that still to this day resonates with me around Symantec and McAfee and others, that they had a centralized AV server that sort of did like a Windows update server, right? You download the thing, you push it out, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have MDE. I'm a customer. I don't use that. And I want to use an antivirus product that comes embedded into the operating system. How do I manage it? How do I go in and manage this thing? Because I'm used to going to an EPO server, seeing all the deployments, say, okay, push it here. How do I do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, I'll give you what I know, and then people will say, like, how come that guy didn't know more? And that's sort of
no, not at all. And
here's what I'll tell you. It feels like you have many, many choices about the way in which you want to go and manage your virus definitions and where they come from. You can do it through Intune. You can do it through SCCM. There's something called WSUS with SUS that I don't even know what that is, but I know that we can sort of manage our. Am I close?
Yeah, you're good. You're good, man. Yeah.
Where you can actually go and get these things from. And so to me, I think what's amazing there is that if you already have these other tools to do these sort of IT operations, that you can use that if you want to as part of getting the sort of virus definitions, the engine updates, the platform updates. And so there's lots of great choices there. And so, it's maybe not exactly the way that you previously did it, but we think that overall this sort of, management story is actually quite compelling for people.
Yeah.
Awesome. Was that close? That was a pretty,
Yeah, I mean, it's not a Stump the Chump podcast. It's just ask a general question. I
will definitely say that, like, part of the challenge, since we're talking about sort of like cyber hygiene, is like it turns out in real life that there's a lot of management complexity. That it's not just a very simple sort of problem, particularly with some of Microsoft's like very large customers, and so. I would just say, like, as much as possible, we're sort of, trying to make that easier for people to sort of do things in a sort of consistent way. But it's ultimately because this sort of the environments that they're working in are just some of the biggest in the world. So,
I mean, whatever, I don't want to call it a problem, whatever that challenge is has been solved, because there are some customers out there who don't consume our Defender for Endpoint solution. That's sort of tied to most likely E5, and they manage and use Defender, in adjacent to another solution. So they're managing it somehow. System Center, GPOs, WAS for downloading that. So I was just wondering if you had some unique insight, but it sounds like this pain point is known. And maybe being addressed.
So the thing that's sort of out there is it's had sort of various names, but is the it's called MD attached, but it's like the security settings for like Defender, right? I mean, that is ultimately where the getting that sort of more of that unified experience, single in portal, mem policies, like getting all that together. And so I think we've got that in sort of various states of preview, and people should sort of go look at that for more of that. If more of that experience is what they're looking for.
Unless you're in GCC mod, which it's not available. Sorry, Prince.
So you're right. Yeah. We should get some shirts to say, "Is it in Gov?"
I know.
Right? That's smart. That's smart.
More than across, I think. Going back to the show notes, we had to read out from our producers that interviewed you thoroughly.
Listen, as long as you think I'm keeping up, like we could stray, but
No, I'm not doing it. I'm not that guy. Tamper protection.
Yeah.
I know what the words mean. I speak English sort of fluently. What is tamper protection as it relates to your job? What are you doing with it?
So I was just following Brody here, and I did my head what do you call that? A subheading? Did my little thing turn on there to say turn tamper protection?
It does.
Josh,
Love it.
For those who can't see, says turn on tamper protection just below his name. And I think there's a good reason for that, which he's going to get into right now. Why do we need tamper protection, Josh?
What is tamper protection?
Yeah.
Why is it not all by default?
Great questions. These are
Should
all
be all by
great
default.
questions.
Yeah.
So again, the thing that we're sort of seeing when you look at the data is that tamper protection is what puts the Defender in its like secure defaults, right? And so when those secure defaults are on, like, hey, look, you're actually in a really much better state and better protected against a lot of these sort of nasty things like ransomware. And so like we don't put every setting into tamper protection. It's not like you can't make like any changes, but there's like a key settings that are basically locked in their default. So the most obvious one or most important one is real-time protection, which means that it is in fact an antivirus, right? Like, or it's in active mode. I mean, you can still have it in sort of passive mode, but like if your intention is to have Defender on and scanning, then you want tamper protection on. And so it's a feature which has really been around for a long time. And last January, it's been on by default in E5. It's like on by default in a lot of SKUs, but it's still like sort of not enough. And so one of the things that I've been working on is just getting it on by default and also like on for everyone. So some of getting it on for everyone, honestly, is like, hey, awareness, like telling people to turn tamper protection on, telling people that it's like super important and keeping themselves safe. But the other thing that we're doing increasingly is taking a bit of a change in strategy around asking customers to opt out, right? So we announced this like last September, and it's in a sort of gradual rollout where we're saying like, hey, if you haven't turned tamper protection on or off, if you don't do anything, we're going to turn it on for you. Okay. And we've started to slowly like do that and build some capability and some learnings there. And it's like our intention to sort of continue in that way because we just think it's so critical to keeping customers safe.
What about the ominous call that you get? Hey, Josh. Hey, Grandma. Well, I went to the Microsoft store, Best Buy, and I bought me a laptop. And what do I need to do with it? Is tamper protection on then? Or is Grandma?
It is actually on by default for consumers. And
good. That's actually, I didn't know that.
It's on. It has been on by default for consumers. A lot of times, for what it's worth, you do get an OEM and they've like installed some so.
Yeah.
Anyway, some details there. By the way, when I was trying to explain to my kids like what I do here, I was literally in the Best Buy and I was like, you go to as many of those machines as possible and you find that switch and you turn it on. Anyways, it's like that's my job. I got to get that switch. Turned on.
I love how we're doing the opt-out now, Josh. I got to say, right? Like it's by default when we enable these features and we roll them out, they should be in a secure state. It shouldn't by default, right? Yeah. And then it should be tweaking from there. It's up to you.
What I will say is it is a journey. It's a journey to do that because grandma is, a single customer or some bigger customers. And, we do know that like different capabilities have sort of different profiles, different, we call them friction. And so we don't undertake this like initiative with tamper protection lightly. Like I said, this is not like, oh, hey, let's just start just turning stuff on. Like we really have looked at both the sort of effectiveness and impact of like why this is sort of important. And we've got like tons of like data and evidence that it's, doesn't have these sort of, there's no reason why we shouldn't. And so we'll just kind of push into that journey together.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't want to turn all the ASR rules on out of the box, right? I deploy MD all the time, and all kinds of shenanigans that can occur. For,
what I would say about, it's actually a sort of like, I think it's a fair point. Like one of the things that we're trying to do there is just like make it clearer for customers, like these, like do these first, do this, then this, right? And so it was maybe subtle, but in the ASR reports that came out, I forget when that release was, in the last couple of months, we actually created a division inside of the ASR rules. I don't know if you guys caught that, but there's like 3 standard ASR rules, and then there's like 13 other rules. And so, yes, that's true. And so that's part of what we're trying to do to sort of say, like, listen, like, see these 3 here. Those 3 are the LSAS rule, the vulnerable drivers rule, and one of the WMI persistence ones I've got in my notes. Like those are the 3 that we're like, you know what? Like, why don't you start with these? So,
so Josh, I think if people are hesitant to turn on tamper protection in an enterprise environment, I assume it's because they think something bad is going to happen. So can you talk about what does happen?
Yeah, I guess in some sense it's I don't know, it's so much like fear. The general scenario is like, I don't have this thing on today. And so like, how is it going to be different? Not so much like we're going to break stuff, but like, here's a very common sort of challenge is like, today we troubleshoot devices by GPO, right? So for example, very common troubleshooting scenario with antivirus is I need you to turn off real-time protection because somebody raised a ticket and said, app XYZ isn't working the way that we thought. And so like other applications, their sort of like standard playbook is if there's any sort of performance problem or any sort of like hiccups, like if you want to open a case with them, you got to turn off your antivirus, right? And so IT sort of solves this today, like with GPO. They move the group. It's got a different group policy. It turns off real-time protection. So by the way, GPO is the same thing that the bad guys use. It's like the same channel, the same permissions that people use, right? So in order to move to tamper protection, they've got to change, in some sense, the way that they're troubleshooting these devices. And so this was some of the main feedback that we heard in talking with customers over the past period of time. And so last year we introduced what's called troubleshooting mode. Who is that? Sorry.
Approaching dinner dog.
Do love a good dog. So we introduced troubleshooting mode, and I think that has really given customers a lot of confidence that like probably the main thing that they're worried about tamper protect like is sort of addressed there. So but
Smart.
Does that make sense? I mean, that to me is sort of like the main use case for what they're sort of worried about and what would happen, and again, I mean, I think we've tried to answer that with this troubleshooting mode capability. We did the other thing that this is sort of the burden of this product being like an old product is there's like a lot of like lessons learned in that every time that you create like a gap, a way that you can limit protection or turn off or do something, bad guys will want to like take advantage of it. So we've been very sort of like security conscious in the design of the troubleshooting mode, right? So troubleshooting mode can only be turned on centrally. So it can't be turned on locally. There's no local password. It's turned on centrally. It's only turned on for a limited period of time. It's like 3 or 4 hours right now, and you can like renew up to some limit by device. Yeah, again, these are all like thoughtful security concerns here. And then like it's all audited, right? So any changes sort of there. And then the big thing there is that any changes that you make while the device is in troubleshooting mode are automatically reverted.
Oh, okay. So I just kind of learned about troubleshooting mode recently. We've got a customer, and they're a policing agency, and they have a digital forensics team. Yeah. And they want to migrate to MDE, but they want to make sure that, hey, if one of our cool forensic software doesn't work randomly, we can quickly go in and troubleshoot and see if it is MDE for whatever reason, and then go from there. And it's a way better option than just omitting them from certain protections, right? It gives them the option on the fly to kind of do those.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's like a continuum of like, we'll call them turning tamper protection off, right? So what troubleshooting mode is going to let you do is going to do it for like a limited period of time, like a constrained time, like a sort of temporary reason to sort of do that. There are, Andrew, not to minimize the concern of people saying like, but like tamper protection, like it could break, like sometimes things go wrong. And there are absolutely environments that customers have, mission critical systems, life-saving systems, medical, like where there's like, we can have no possibility of this thing happening. And so that's not like a temporary thing. That's just like more of a policy thing. And so for them, the big capability that we have there is you can sort of control target through various tools, SCCM, Intune, where this thing is actually turned off. So it's a sort of like on by default and then exclude some devices. So I'm not sure which your police agency would fall into. The goal is really to minimize the places where you need to say like, I don't really want to have this control, because simply put, without the sort of protection of locking down the settings, it is fairly trivial to just turn off Defender, and then it's sort of like maybe that was the original point. It's actually so effective at keeping people safe from like ransomware, like these things. Like you really do want that on.
So maybe I just don't know what I'm doing. This question is directed to
probably
you and Andrew.
Yeah,
more than likely I don't know what I'm doing. I'm looking at my workstation right now, and I'm inside the security thing, and two things that occurred to me on my company managed one. It gave me a security alert that my device may not be safe, and then I brought up the thing, and they said tamper protection is off. When I tried to turn it on, I couldn't. That's a management thing.
Yep.
But on my personal here in my lab, I'm looking at it, and I don't remember if this machine's enrolled or not. Where would someone look to turn on tamper protection? Is it up under device security, or is it up under
You're talking in the Security Center app, like on the device itself?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. And it's so when I try to change something.
Hold on. I'm going to just.
There you go into settings.
I'll just go in here and I will.
I must have it on because I tried to make a change and it said, you cannot make this change.
It's under virus and threat protection, manage settings, virus and threat protection settings. And you got to scroll down.
Protection is preventing changes to this setting.
Yeah, and if you scroll down there, real-time protection, cloud deliver protection, sample submission, tamper protection.
Got it. Okay. Nice. I evidently, because this machine is enrolled in MDE, I must have a rule that's turning all this.
Yep.
Maybe you're in that opt-out thing, right?
Well, I mean, I think the learning, like the sort of like aha there is like something there. It's like hard to know, like the fourth one down, is that the one that's like super important to have on? Like wouldn't it just be easier if we kind of just like had it on? So that's a lot. It's a lot to sort of like figure out. So we're just really trying to make dogs.
Yeah, for people who are listening, they may not know, but Brody's beautiful dog has come in and is rolling around adorably on the floor. So it's distracting us.
They can't see. They actually have Jax has a like a sign that says "Turn Tamper Protection On." That is adorable. Thanks, Brody.
I might change his name to Tamper Protection. I always have it on. So like, I love this. Like, obviously we want to have tamper protection on. We want to look at the LSAS rule, the vulnerable drivers rule, locking persistence, all the fun stuff. I also agree with on Office documents and Adobe making child processes. This should be no-brainers, but some organizations still rely on some ancient stuff. Like, so go ahead.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would say is like, it's, I don't want to be glib. It's a sort of like easier said than done. I mean, at the end of the day, I think what we can do is sort of be kind of like a little clearer about like priorities and say like, hey, these are the things that we think are important, and like encourage people to do it. But like at the end of the day, every sort of customer, like customer's different, different set of priorities. I know that oftentimes projects don't have the sort of like right people to sort of go do them, or the skill, like whatever. I mean, there's like lots of sort of reasons why it's like a sort of easier said than done to sort of get these things on. I mean, sometimes people are sort of concerned and they've got processes and things like that. So I think all that we can do is like encourage people to sort of do it for things where we feel like sufficiently, confident that like we're doing the right thing there. Like, get them on by default, try to push them on for everyone. I mean, that's
we're talking about an end result of a solution, feature, whatever inside the product. But let's go back to you again. One more question. What drives your day-to-day work? How do you find the task list prioritization of what to work on? Is this an ongoing thing? So I'm trying to figure out where you
are you talking about me personally, or you're talking like from a product backlog? Like,
I'm talking about your gig at Microsoft, you program manager, product manager, right?
Listen, I have to tell you, there is always something to do. There are always people, the team that I work on is sort of global. So like, just when you think you're going to bed, then there's somebody from, India who's waking up, or someone from Israel. And so like you could literally work 24/7 on like super interesting, amazing things. So I think this like work-life balance thing is super important.
Let me ask the question in a different manner.
Yeah.
I work primarily in Sentinel, and our primary feedback is something called UAT, right? What is your feedback mechanism, if there is one, to help you with improvements, enhancements, innovation?
Wow. I mean, so I think the thing that's really amazing about being a product manager is you get all the information, right? So I get information from, we work very closely with our CXE team, who works with support, who works with Black. It all sort of comes to us. We get great opportunities to work with MVPs. We've got various sort of forums. There's an MVP summit. I mean, it's just like, it feels like an almost like unlimited like supply of feedback and things to sort of go fix and so lots of pieces of information. Like at the end of the day, the mission here is like to keep customers safe. And so it's really driven by like customers, right? What are customers asking for, and how do we deliver that and make them sort of successful? So I'm not sure what
you had nothing to do with the fiasco here a few weeks ago where all the links stopped working. I saw your name on it. I didn't want to bring it up, but the listeners want to know.
That's rude, Edward.
Yeah. I mean, like, to sort of do with the fiasco is sort of an interesting question, right? So, I think we're talking about the ASR.
Yeah, I know it wasn't you. I'm just giving you grief, bro.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's sort of information is sort of out there. The thing that that I was sort of involved in was like helping people sort of recover and working on. I worked very closely with the team that was building the sort of recovery script that you can see out there in the GitHub repo. And so we worked, I would say, extremely hard to get that out to customers. And I think it's been, I don't have the numbers about how many people have sort of been involved, been used it, but like that's what that was sort of my little contribution in that, and I'm continuing to work with some customers and partners to make sure that like we get all that stuff as good as we can make it.
It's kind of a funny bug. I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of hilarious. Everyone's shortcuts disappear, and there's a big uproar on the internet. And don't take shortcuts in life, hey Edward?
Well, that whole remediation thing is sort of. I didn't know you, Mr. Bregman, before you came on, but when we were looking at the resolution, I've seen that name before. So yeah, you were working on the thing. You had nothing to do with it, but it's that story of life. I didn't cause it, but I got to come fix it.
The only thing that I will tell you is that, like I said, I have this weird background where I've sort of done everything, and so I think everybody now sort of has like an associate's degree in PowerShell. So,
I wish.
Oh, come on, what I mean? Andrew, you were really good at it.
I'm not saying I don't. I said I wish everyone did.
So there was an opportunity. I mean, I think there's a sort of thing where it's like every product manager is like, I used to be a developer, so it was a weird opportunity to write some code and help some people, and so I was.
So to our listeners, Andrea's box name or Fancy Geek Girl, this is a second edition. I knew her as Scripty Girl,
Scripting Gal, yeah.
Scripty Gal. That's what I knew as. All of her blogs, Scripty Gal, which I like better. I just thought it was cool, and your little avatar was cool too, right?
So I mean, I would say I'm probably by background more of a Python person.
Nice.
But
Python's hyper relevant these days.
I'm trying to learn it. I may have to pick your brain. Hey,
but PowerShell again. PowerShell is super cool and super useful. And
what is PowerShell at now? 7.4?
7, yeah.
7, which is apparently the cross-plat version, but 5 is the something. So.
PowerShell is awesome. Let me tell you, the worst thing is try to uninstall because the in-place upgrade. I mean, it just creates all these flows. Now you got a gazillion PowerShell, and then you would think that the modules, it should be some intelligence. What is it? PowerShell -update all or something? I don't know. I regret. I just hate upgrading because I'm gonna lose all the stuff I already got. I think there is a way you can sort of do better if you use VS Code rather than directly.
Yeah, VS Code is way better anyway. Sure. Yeah, it's awesome.
But, that probably doesn't make sense because VS Code is just going to reference the modules that you have on your machine.
It updates automatically. Josh, before we go, super quick last question. So, hey, just high level, there was some recent improvements to how MDA and MDAV handle ransomware, right? And people should check that out. We should.
Yeah, I would definitely say like, please do. We're constantly like making improvements. The security researchers are doing awesome work every day, and always investing sort of like making those signatures like as powerful and impactful as possible. On the feature side, right, it's like tamper protection, getting tamper protection turned on. We just added the ability to tamper protect exclusions just very recently, so that's super cool and something that customers have been asking for. And we think that it's we see it in that bad guys sometimes use exclusions in ways that we wish they wouldn't. And so adding that capability, we think is going to be really impactful there. And I mentioned before, like in network protection, we made some recent enhancements around C2, command and control, and things like that. So like lots of great stuff constantly going into the product. Some of these are sort of features, but honestly, a lot of the work is just sort of in the amazing work that the team does and the sort of engines and signatures. So
we should wrap up with just saying that, right? Like that's off to you and the team who receive feedback all the time from all these different mechanisms and are improving the solution week over week. I mean, it's awesome.
And as an industry, it seems like the whole antivirus thing has converged into just antivirus, anti-malware, anti-worm or Trojan. Because I've been doing this long enough to remember that there were separate antivirus engines based on the product you were protecting.
Right.
Andrew may remember this. Remember the exchange used to use something called Sabari. Oh yeah, and you would have to run Sabari, against these things, and then maybe it's a rumor, but I thought that our AV engine used at the time some competitors' AV signatures and intelligence in our product, but it seems to be solely owned by Microsoft now. Our intelligence, our engine is just ours. right? And it is irrespective of. Well, I don't do with databases. I guess you can run AV on a SQL server, right?
Edward, you missed Brody's subtle way of saying, as we wrap this up, because we are wrapping this up, because it is 6:01, and I have to go. You guys do not, though. And Surienda asked a question too. So,
to my listeners, I'm going to get better. I'm only 1 minute over.
Edward, you're amazing.
Oh,
you're
man,
amazing.
No, I know how it is now. My feelings are hurt. So thank you, Josh, for coming. Thank you, Josh,
for coming
on.
Thank you, folks. This was like super fun. I really appreciate the opportunity to tell people to turn tamper protection on.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Don't be a stranger. Listen to the show, promote it. We'll get it out. And thank you so much. You give me a couple things I wrote down I want to go look at. I'm going to ping you out of band. I want to ask you a couple of questions.
No hard questions, though, right, Josh? No hard questions.
No, I mean, listen, I think we all got through it in one piece. I'm sure people will tell me how to do better next time, but growth mindset part of being at Microsoft. So
absolutely,
really
and all of
really
the chat appreciates your time today, Josh. Everybody in chat's really happy, and thank you for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks, folks. Happy Wednesday.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Happy Wednesday. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.